There are over 12,000 known species of grass in the world today, with new species still being discovered. But for all the time that humans have been around, we've only really used a tiny fraction of them. We've domesticated just 30 or so types to be our lawn grasses and foraged just a handful of those for animal feed. And yet, despite how ubiquitous they are, most people know embarrassingly little about grasses. Here are 5 key interesting facts about grass that you probably didn't know. The first fact is that there are actually 2 kinds of grass. The type that we think of as normal and typical, which scientists call true grasses or poikilohydric grasses, and another type of grass known as resurrection grass. Resurrection grasses can survive in incredibly dry conditions, sometimes for years. They are able to do this by slowing their metabolism down to extremely low levels and entering a state called cryptobiosis, where they look dead but aren't. Then, when water becomes available again, their growth accelerates rapidly. So much so that after a raindrop falls on the plant, its leaves will uncurl in just 20 minutes, and these plants can double in size within a day. Just imagine if your houseplants could do that. Unfortunately, this unique ability doesn't translate well to domestication. And so, while resurrection grasses are often studied for their potential applications in things like space travel, they're not grown as crops or used for lawns. They're not very good at being grassy. That role is reserved for the true grasses. But true grasses, despite being more suited to life as a lawn, are pretty limited in their hardiness compared to other plants. For example, you can freeze most true grasses down to around -7 degrees Celsius, and they'll come back just fine in the spring. But many trees can withstand temperatures as low as -45 degrees Celsius, and the average temperature in Siberia in January is around -18 degrees Celsius. And it's not just freezing that grasses struggle with. They also tend to grow best in fairly mild climates. Most lawn grasses won't grow at all below 10 degrees Celsius. That means that places like Siberia, Alaska, northern Canada, northern Europe, northern Asia, and northern North America are all basically off limits for growing traditional lawns. If you want a lawn in these places, you have to use special cold, hardy varieties of grass that stay green all year round. But even then, you have to mow your lawn during the winter, or else it'll become a snow-covered wasteland, because grasses are so sensitive to the cold, they actually haven't managed to spread into the Arctic. Despite the Arctic being covered in ice for most of the year, the ground beneath that ice thaws in the summer, allowing grasses to grow. But the thawing also allows a host of other non-grassy plants to get there first, out-competing the grasses for resources. Grasses need open, sunny spaces in order to thrive. This means that they tend to grow in areas that aren't too mountainous, because mountains tend to have lots of shade from large rocks and trees. And they tend to grow on flat plains instead, which is why you see grasses dominating the landscape in the prairies of North America, the pampas of South America, the steppes of Eurasia, and the downs of South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Grasslands are found all over the world in these temperate climates, but they're absent from tropical and desert regions. And that might seem a bit odd. After all, we think of deserts as being full of grasses, and some grasslands are actually found in desert climates. But these are exceptions rather than the rule. Desert climates tend to have too high of a ratio between rainfall and temperature to support the kind of grassland ecosystems that we think of. In fact, the reason why some grasses do grow in deserts is because of an evolutionary quirk. You see, C4 grasses use a special biochemical pathway to carry out photosynthesis. This pathway is more efficient than the one that most plants use, which is called C3. It's better at minimizing water loss and it fixes carbon dioxide more efficiently. These adaptations mean that C4 grasses are more resistant to drought and extreme heat, making them perfect for hot deserts. But this pathway comes with its own trade-offs. The plants that use it tend to do worse in colder climates. So C4 grasses don't grow much above the 40th parallel north or south, which is why the world's grasslands are mostly found in the temperate zones. Our final fact about grass is that it has a surprisingly ancient history. Fossils of the earliest known grasses date back about 65 million years, right after the mass extinction that killed off the dinosaurs. These early grasses were probably quite different from modern grasses. They were small plants that grew in clumps and reproduced asexually. sexual reproduction, where two parents combine their genetic material to create a unique offspring, is thought to have evolved later, which would explain why all modern grasses are almost entirely sexual reproducers. But how exactly grasses evolved is still up for debate. Some scientists think that grasses evolved from a group of flowering plants called the camelinids, which also includes plants like bromeliads and palms. Others argue that they came from a group called the poles, which also includes plants like bamboo and pandans. If that's true, then grasses and bamboos would be related. But we'd have to go back 55 million years until they shared a common ancestor, and it turns out that there's some evidence to support both hypotheses. Grasses and camelinids have a lot in common, genetically and biochemically, but grasses and bamboo also share some anatomical similarities. Ultimately, the jury's still out on this one, and it's possible that grasses could have multiple origins. Grass is clearly an extremely successful group of plants, but just how successful? Well, that depends on how you define success. If you're talking about sheer numbers, then grasses are doing really well. True grasses make up roughly 25% of all plant species, and they cover about half of the planet's land surface. By contrast, trees cover less than 4% of the Earth's land surface, and all animals make up less than 1%. But if you're looking for success in terms of biomass, then grasses lag behind. They only make up 5% of the planet's total biomass, whereas the remaining 95% is made up of just 3 other kingdoms: bacteria, fungi, animals, and protists. So yes, grasses are everywhere, but they're not all that big. So there you have it, 5 surprising facts about grass. It's clear that grasses are a hugely important part of our world, and yet few of us know much about them. Hopefully, you learned something new today. Do you have a favorite fact about grass? Let me know down in the comments, along with any other fun facts that you know. And as always, thank you for watching.